RC is going to give us his dynasty and fantasy football angles. And I'm just going to, just tee up the topic for him. But I know he's anxious to give the listeners his thoughts and opinions on the following things. If you haven't checked out his site already, ffmetrics.com, go visit it, subscribe. All our content's there. But RC, first topic we had on the docket, Xavier Worthy, wide receiver, drafted by Kansas City, where they traded up with the Buffalo Bills in this past first round, and they got the wide receiver who shattered the 40-yard dash record at the combine. What are your thoughts on him? What's going on?
And for more background on this, Andrew knows the topics, the names, but he has no idea what I'm about to say. And the information that I have, some of it is a little insider info, and some of it is I saw things that triggered me that I think are going to be worthy of potentially betting against, betting on. So, but with the Xavier Worthy, I just wanted to follow up. I noted this last week for subscribers, but just following through, because there's kind of a 1-2 punch of information on Xavier Worthy that has my attention, because as a scout, I'm one of the only people that seems to be against Xavier Worthy as a real impact player in the NFL. I have questions on it. Running fast is fine. That's great. That certainly is attention getting. But that in and of itself, if you just went back and looked through the great 40 times, the 4.2 runners, or the low 4.3 runners from combines or pro days, and see how their careers turned out, if you just bet blind against all of them, you would win a lot more than you would lose betting against them. So just because Xavier Worthy runs fast doesn't really excite me. And because I had done scouting on him, I saw, a fairly fast, not as fast as what he ran at the combine. I don't see that breakaway speed on his college tape, but I also see very shaky hands in the passing game. And when you're that thin and you can be a bit of a one-trick pony of trying to outrun everybody, and if the speed isn't that real and your hands are a little dicey, it gave me Mecole Hardman vibes right off the bat when I watched him play before he was drafted by Kansas City. And the fact that he was drafted in the first round by Kansas City doesn't mean jack squat to me as a scout. If anything, if Kansas City is into you as a wide receiver, you probably want to bet against that, because we've got Mecole Hardman, we've got the trade for Kadarius Toney, we've got Sky Moore, we've got a too much of a contract for Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Their track record with outside of Tyreek Hill at wide receiver has been a disaster during their Super Bowl run. So on one hand, if I look at it from a team standpoint, it doesn't matter whether they hit on these wide receivers or not, because they're winning Super Bowls regardless. So set that aside. I'm looking at more of the fantasy dynasty betting aspect on Xavier Worthy, and I'm looking at him and I'm going, I don't see this wide receiver that the Chiefs and a lot of other people are into. But the couple things to report on him: at the rookie camp, he had some shaky moments catching the ball, and this is, in shorts and shoulder pads, or just shorts and t-shirt and helmet. So some of the issues kind of stood out. It's going to be easy to say it's just rookie camp. It was only a couple incidents. This happens all the time. You can name guys who had struggles as rookies with drops in camp and all that. I'm just saying, I saw he has this issue on his tape at Texas. Now it's already showing up in his first rookie camp. At the same time, I had two different people tell me that Xavier Worthy looked quite shaky to them, which was a surprise because they thought he was supposed to be this, great wide receiver. But at the same time, Louis Reese Zamet, people were going, wow, he's a lot better than we thought he might be, and really good as a receiver. And I'm like, no kidding. We were talking about that a couple months ago. People are starting to whisper and go, maybe he should be a wide receiver. I'll guarantee you, I'll put all my money on that he should be a wide receiver. That guy can run routes and he's got pretty good hands. But we're still in rookie camp mode, so you can't go too crazy. But Reese Zamet looked good in camp. People agreed. Jarrett Wiley, the tight end that we like, really got good attention from rookie camp. But Xavier Worthy he's fast. From the different reports, from the Homer reports that we get at this time of the year, where every player drafted by, if I get these reports from various Chiefs fan sites that are going, to the rookie camps. They're making observations. Everybody they drafted is a star or a steal or a star and a steal. So when people are reporting on those sites, when they're not going overboard on Worthy, then I figured there probably is something. There might have been a little something to his issues. But I thought the other interesting thing with Xavier Worthy was I had someone with some insight into the Bills tell me that they can confirm, or they're willing to confirm, that the Bills were, when the Chiefs traded with the Bills, so the Chiefs traded up with the Bills, who everybody thought the Bills were in position to draft the great Xavier Worthy, and they traded that pick to Kansas City. Everybody's like, why in the world would you let the Chiefs go get the great, fast Xavier Worthy? I'm here to tell you, I've heard it from two different independent sources now, that the Chiefs knew the Bills knew that's what the Chiefs were doing, and they were like, this is us harming the Chiefs. If they're going to draft Xavier, we want them to draft Xavier. We don't want them to move up and draft either Keon Coleman or whoever else was in that range. That, like, when they knew it was going to be for Xavier Worthy, they're like, go, here you go. We'll make a deal. So there's a lot of smoke with Xavier Worthy that may lead to a fire, that he's nowhere near as good as people are saying. And we've been saying that for a while, but there's just a couple nuggets to connect the dots on that. The start of the Xavier Worthy era isn't too spectacular right now.
That is really interesting, RC. The fact that Buffalo, first of all, had the intel that Kansas City was going to go up and get Worthy and not their guy Coleman, but also that he's struggling out of the gate, which he's not even really going up against the ones or anything. So how is he going to look when, you have like the first string defense guarding him, and they have a pretty good secondary too, so they'll probably lock him up. One thing I wanted to ask you, do you think the people that are kind of seeing the Rashee Rice situation, he might be missing time, and thinking, oh, maybe Worthy's a good investment, do you advise them to pump the brakes a little bit?
They should pump the brakes, slam on the brakes, turn the ignition off, and be like Rashee Rice and walk away from the scene, because there's an accident getting ready to happen with Xavier Worthy. I would suggest you not even get into the Xavier Worthy market.
Well, okay, RC, you caught me off guard with that, but okay, so we'll see what happens with Xavier Worthy, but I'm excited for our guy LRZ. I'm pumped that he's getting recognition already, and I know for a fact that they're gonna, at the very least, they're gonna put him out there. They have to try him for special teams, right, under these new kickoff return rules. Yeah. So he's gonna at least have that.
And the reports were that he was getting that time with some others, and that went better than they expected. Everything on LRZ I've heard from people that I trust is like, wow, better than we expected, more professional than we expected, learning everything faster than expected. Is like everything positive, positive, positive. When I hear things about Worthy, everybody's like, yeah, well, it's rookie camp and, he's got time. And it's just shorts and t-shirt, it'll be, which, there's always that possibility. But I think when they put the pads on and people start blasting him, it's going to get even worse, is my prediction. So, but the LRZ part is if Worthy ends up being Nicole Hardman and being a problem, and Rashee Rice ends up getting and more like an 8-game suspension or even outright cut by the Chiefs. And I can't confirm this, but they were talking to Zay Jones right in the midst of the second issue with Rashee Rice. And you would think, why wouldn't Zay Jones, because he's going to be a low-cost wide receiver pickup, why wouldn't he sign with the Chiefs? I'm getting word that wide receivers are starting to shy away from signing with the Chiefs. Yes, they know they could get a Super Bowl, so there is that aspect to draw attention. But if somebody wants to go get numbers, they're looking at the way the wide receiver output has been since Tyreek Hill left, and minus Tyreek Hill, all of the non-Tyreek Hill wide receivers during the Mahomes era. Can you name one that's become? It's not like Mahomes has. It's Kelsey and it's Tyreek Hill.
But they're all not very good. I mean, Zay Jones would probably be the best non-Tyreek Hill receiver to walk through that room, right?
I'd have to go back and look, see if we're skipping somebody or missing somebody, but he'd be up there, and he's a professional wide receiver, so he would instantly produce. He would be a quality producer, but players are not wanting to take a discount necessarily to go there and win a Super Bowl. That's what the Chiefs are selling is, yeah, you can make more money with whatever team, but you could win a Super Bowl here. But if you're a player and, think about it, if you're an NFL player and you're in your last year or two, or maybe you think you have some time left to get another contract after this one particular year, and teams are offering you one team's offering you $4 million and the Chiefs are offering, let's say, $1.5 million. That's a lot of money to go, yeah, I'm gonna go join in and jump on for a Super Bowl, when it's probably not going to further my career to be I'm not going to get big numbers as a wide receiver on the Chiefs, because there's no history of that, recent history outside of Tyreek Hill. They spread it around, and they're not making wide receivers sustainable stars. So that's just an unconfirmed side thought. So if they're not getting the Zay Jones, if Rashee Rice is gone and Worthy flops, and maybe even if Marquise Brown has his foot issue lingers over, they don't have many choices. If LRZ is that good, now they're probably going to butcher this by forcing him to be a running back, because that's what they're starting out with. But I swear that guy is built to be a wide receiver. I don't know how fast he's going to get to it, but they're dropping like flies in Kansas City. So I'm getting pumped by LRZ.
Wow, that was a interesting twist. I didn't think that this Worthy topic was going to go back into LRZ, but we'll definitely be watching him during the preseason. RC, are we ready to move on to the second topic? Okay, so next player on the docket that RC wanted to talk about was from my Atlanta Falcons, Kirk Cousins. Obviously, we paid him a boatload of money, but then our coach, our owner, whatever, there's no cohesion in that building. Somebody decided to draft Michael Penix there. So we pay all that money to Kirk Cousins. We draft Michael Penix at 8. RC, what are you hearing about Kirk Cousins?
As a known Falcons fan that you are, and Falcons insider who hangs out with other Falcons insiders now, So you're now you're starting to get in the Falcons loop. What is your current status or opinion on Kirk Cousins Penix situation from the Cousins perspective? Is he mad? Is he not mad? What's your general feeling right now? I'm curious as to what's going through Kirk Cousins' mind right now.
I would have to, so I don't have this confirmed or anything, but just reading the tea leaves, at first he was shocked, and obviously the agent put out some, was quick to reach out to insiders and say we didn't see this coming, shocked us, whatever. Then I started seeing reports that he reached out to Penix and that he's helping him come along. He gave him his number, and it sounds like he's going to be a good vet to him, but I don't have that confirmed. And it doesn't look like a murky situation that I thought it would be. But again, we have to see that play out. We're sitting here in May 2024, right? Like, things could happen during the preseason. He could start slow, and then when Falcons fans are yelling for Penix, what's going to happen? RC, are you hearing anything differently?
This situation is kind of splitting off into going down two very different streams. That's interesting to me. One, it's as you say, Cousins is acting professional and is reached out to Penix, and there's no tension there because one little extra factor about them, Cousins is very religious, but so is Penix. So the two of them have connected, and he realizes that Penix isn't a jerk, and I don't think he's going to leave Penix hanging or blame Penix for anything. So, yes, the two of them are going to have some type of decent relationship, maybe even more, because Cousins is a good guy. Where Cousins is quite unhappy is he is definitely unhappy with the Falcons, according to my source, that he definitely feels like he was lied to, that he just had a press conference, and when they asked him, he evaded. He answered with a non-answer, but he answered clearly that somebody asked him, one of the reporters asked him if he would have signed knowing that they were drafting a quarterback, and he veered off into some non-political answer that was all the answer that you needed. Like, there's no way he would have done that. So he definitely feels lied to about by the Falcons, because they didn't tell him. They could have told them, months in advance. They could have told them at the time that they were signing him. So it's a definite situation where that's not going to go over well for Kirk Cousins, that you lied to him. You kept information from him to get him to sign in Atlanta. Granted, you gave him buckets of money, so you'd think that he's not losing too much sleep about it. But for a guy that made a big change from Minnesota based on a lie, that's not going to sit well with him. To the point that Cousins can also look at this as we look at it sometimes from the Penix standpoint, or from the fantasy standpoint, like, if Cousins, I agree with you, if Cousins struggles, there's going to be some calls for Penix, and it's going to be a lot of pressure on Cousins, and their schedule is kind of tough out of the gates. So we could see a struggle out of the gates.
We could see 0-3 very easily.
So I don't think they'll pull the plug on Cousins, but the fans will start getting itchy, especially if Penix has a hellacious preseason.
But and he's going to open up at OTAs, I think. I don't know if Cousins is going to be ready to. Yeah. So imagine, like, he's going to get the first team reps with Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. John Middlecoff on his podcast always talks about these are young, impressionable guys, and you're throwing Penix there. Who do you think is going to go out with Pitts, London, and Bijan? Do you think it's going to be Kirk rehabbing, or is it going to be the young QB Penix who they're developing a rapport with? They're going to all want Penix to start.
And now there's going to be a question of what will Kirk Cousins do in response to this now that he's got this bad taste in his mouth? Is he going to go to the OT? Is he going to go out of his way? Is he going to do the extra practice? Is he going to do this? And is he going to do that? Because he could be looking at he's stuck for this season. It's not like he can jump up and say, "You lied to me, trade me." He's already in the bag for Atlanta. He's not going to get traded. He might as well try to make the best of it. But if the best of it doesn't happen, whatever that means, he could be pushing for a trade. He's got a ton of guaranteed money, and he'd have plenty of people wanting to pick up that contract or restructure some type of contract, because his contract's really a 2-year deal, and they're going to let him go after 2 years and go to Penix, just unless the Falcons win back-to-back Super Bowls with Cousins, which I don't think is going to happen. So if everybody's thinking, oh, Cousins will be out of here in 2 years, I think Cousins is looking at this like, I might be out of here in 1 year. I'll dictate where I'm going to. They'll trade me. I'll waive my no trade clause for certain teams. Like, I want to work out the deal with a certain team. And then he goes to wherever, to the Jets, to whoever's going to give him. That this Cousins thing could be now aiming towards Cousins wanting out at the end of the season, and maybe not giving. I don't want to say he's going to not give his full effort. I'm sure he won't lack on the field, but I don't know if he's going to do the OTA. I don't know if he's going to do all the things that he might have done if he was the comfortable, this is where I'm going to retire. But that's one thing to mention about Kirk Cousins. The other thing I just wanted to slide in real quick is I'm seeing him develop. You know who he's developing the best personal relationship with on the team?
Who's that?
Darnell Mooney, who is also a very religious person. So I can see why they would have a connection. There's something that they went to, some either workout or event for I can't remember what it was, but he went with Mooney. There's no Drake London in sight of them. It's more Mooney and Cousins. So just noting that and I'm a huge, I love Darnell Mooney, the player. I don't know where, I don't know how excited I'm going to get about him in this situation with Pitts and London and all that. It's not like Cousins is not going to throw to London and throw everything to Mooney, but Mooney's super talented, and they seem to be hitting off a fast relationship where you would think it might be with Pitts and London. It's with Mooney early on. That doesn't mean he has a bad relationship with the other guys, just there's a little connection gaining with Mooney.
Yeah, that's interesting note. And I guess from our betting standpoint, is this more of a, hey, Penix could be out there earlier, let's start looking at his offensive rookie of the year odds at like 80-1, or is this more like, let's calm down with Kirk Cousins? Maybe Atlanta doesn't win this division. Maybe the Saints and Tampa Bay, who have positive odds to win the division, are the better bets here. Because like you said, RC, they start the gates versus Pittsburgh, at Philadelphia, and then they get Kansas City at home. That could very well be 0-3. I know Pittsburgh, isn't that powerhouse offense or whatever. They still have a really good defense, and I'm sure Arthur Smith wants to stick it to the Falcons fans.
Pittsburgh has a defense that's going to give them troubles, especially when you're a new offense that's playing together under live fire for the first time. Those situations tend to start slow, and the schedule set up for a slow start and a strong finish, which would give into the Cousins getting used to everybody and everybody getting used to Cousins. But the Steelers are going to be one of the better defenses out there. I don't know about the Eagles, who were on awful defense to end last year. who was it that week 3?
Kansas City.
Kansas City's got one of the better defenses in the NFL. Then 2 weeks after that, Tampa Bay's got one of the better defenses
And
in the
between
NFL.
the Saints. So
and in between the Saints, who always play them tough, whether I don't think the Saints have a great defense, but they have a good secondary, and they seem to give teams fits when all the secondary is healthy. So there's a slow start, I think, coming for Cousins before everybody goes overboard with London, Pitts, and Cousins. I'm starting to pull back the reins on that, and I'm not looking at Atlanta for the AFC South as this is the automatic thing that we should bet just to take the free money, because how could they not win this division? Because even if something happens to Cousins, they've got Penix. There could be some turmoil if there's a slow start and Cousins gets on, and the media does not like Kirk Cousins. They tried to wipe him out in Minnesota a couple years ago. They're always trying to wipe him out every season and have him replaced with whatever backup du jour is on the squad. So I don't think it'll take much at all for them to turn on Kirk Cousins. Should Michael Penix be put in as the starter, and should Kirk Cousins be traded before the trade deadline, articles weekly after every loss if they start out under 500, which they have the potential because of the schedule of doing. They may win their final 8 games. I can't remember all of their schedule off the top of my head, but the second half on schedule, I was looking, it's like anytime you see the news, like the New York Giants, I think they may have New England in the second. I would just remember glancing at it and going, wow, it's a lot easier in the second half. So, but by that time, there's all this Cousins Penix turmoil. Maybe the Atlanta Falcons aren't the guaranteed money we think, just because we like all of the names plugged in.
Or you wait till week 5 to make that bet, because you'll get better odds most likely if they start out slow. And last thing I'll leave there, 3 of the first 5 games are in prime time. In the past 3 years, Falcons have had not even a combined 3 games in prime time. Most people on the roster, most players on that roster are just used to playing at Carolina Thursday night. That's the extent of their prime time. Now they're going to get the Eagles on the road. They're going to go play the defending Super Bowl champions in Atlanta. Like, come on, that's a really tough schedule. So, RC, any final thoughts with the Falcons, or should we move on to our next item?
I think we hit that one pretty good. Let's move on to the next one.
All right. So, RC wanted to talk about the Bears' early schedule. I'm curious, RC, I don't know it off the top of my head. Do you have a similar sentiment here? Do they have a pretty rough start, or are they on the rosier side?
So I'm in the midst of studying all of the schedules now. I had to update our database, and that took time. So now I'm getting time to really digest and look at the schedule. I don't know how everybody gets the schedule and has, an hour later has instant analysis of knowing what the great schedules are. It's nice fodder to talk about, but to me it takes time to kind of look through all the little nuances. So I'm in the midst of doing that, but midday today I was going to ran in to make some lunch, and I was doing getting things out, putting things on plate, doing just a little normal routines. But when I do that, I'll go on to YouTube, see what interesting clip is out there to listen to while I'm eating, I'm working, while I'm walking, I'm working, while I'm doing anything. I've got something on listening to see what people are talking about, what fresh takes might be out there, what news, press conferences, like especially the Jim Harbaugh one where he's like an alien from another planet, listening to him talk. But I happened to see a YouTube clip of Colin Cowherd proclaiming the Bears' great schedule. And I was like, okay, I haven't really focused on it, so let me see what he's saying. And I like Colin Cowherd He's one of the people that when he was on ESPN radio that influenced me to start having alternative thoughts on football. So I like Colin. He's the best broadcaster radio guy out there. But I definitely don't agree with all of his football opinions. I think they get to be short-sighted and they get to be following the mainstream more and more lately than it used to be 10 or 15 years ago. So, with all that said, I wanted to see what he was going to say about the Bears because I know he's pushing the Bears to maybe even make the playoffs. The Bears have a great schedule. The Bears have Caleb Williams. The Bears have 3 great wide receivers. The Bears feels like everything everybody was saying about the Carolina Panthers last year. It's like it's a team on the rise that just needed the quarterback, and now they got it. So, they're going to be I think they were the favorites to win the division. Them and the Saints out of the gates. That did not work out very well. So I feel like I'm hearing the same exact logic with the Bears. So I clicked on, listened to it while I'm making my lunch, and Colin says, he said, the Bears have such an easy schedule right off the bat. This is going to be really good for the Bears. This is going to be really good for Caleb Williams, who I'm against. I don't think Caleb Williams is anywhere near as good as what the mainstream word is. So I don't think he's as bad as Bryce Young, but I don't think he's as good as whoever it is you want to hold up by comparison. He's not as good as Jaden Daniels. I don't think he's as good as Michael Penix. I don't think he's as good as Bo Nix. I think there's problems with Caleb Williams. But, okay, he's with the Bears, 3 great wide receivers. So Colin goes, he said, look at the schedule, the easy schedule they gave him, and the easy defenses he's going to have to face. He's not facing any tough defenses. And then he says, they start with Tennessee, and I'm thinking, Tennessee has overhauled their entire defense. I mean, this is one of the better. I'm not saying it's like, lock them in their top 10 defense, but this is not the defense from last year that was having half of the defense out on injured reserve. They get their quarterback healthy, but they went out and they got
Snead and Awuzie.
Awuzie, who, if Awuzie is back 2 years removed from his knee injury, if he's back to normal, you got 2 of the better shutdown corners in the NFL. They signed Kenneth Murray, who I think is a very overlooked middle linebacker. Drafted Cedric Gray out of UNC, who we thought was one of the better interior linebackers. They already had some decent defensive line and pass rush pressure. They're a better defense than they have been probably for at least last season, if not 2. So he just blows right by Tennessee like they're nothing. And I'm like, they're not nothing. Then he goes, and Houston, is not a top defense. I'm going, wait a minute. Houston had a good defense last year, and then they just added a whole bunch of firepower in year 2 behind DeMeco Ryans. I wouldn't write them off as an easy matchup for a rookie quarterback with Matt Eberflus as your brainchild for developing your rookie quarterback. Then he says in Indianapolis, which Indianapolis was one of the better defenses last year, and they had a ton of players out hurt. If in theory they get them all back healthy, and they add Latu's the best pass rusher maybe ever that I've ever scouted to add to the mix. Then the Rams were one of the better defenses last year, and they've completely patched up any holes that they had, any shortcomings they had. They went out in free agency and did a masterful job. Losing Aaron, everybody goes, they lost Aaron Donald, so now they stink. That's a blow for sure, but they've got a ton of talent, and it's deep. It reminds me of the early development of the Kansas City Chiefs great defense. It's like it's in that pre-stage of it's going to be good, but eventually it's going to be great. So I would not say that they are a gimme. And then Carolina after that, it starts to drop. But Carolina, the one redeeming value about them last year was they had a pretty decent defense. So I just wanted to note that anybody who's buying into the Bears as having this great schedule start and load up for fantasy, I don't see that at all. I see this as a tough schedule right off the bat. And if you just look at it from the Bears win-loss perspective, you get Tennessee, Houston, Colts. Oddly, they get the three new powerhouse teams in the AFC South with elite quarterbacks. Yes, Will Levis is an elite quarterback.
Elite young quarterback.
Elite young quarterback with everything being designed for him with an offensive-minded head coach now, and a better offensive line and just a healed offensive line. And then you get the Rams, who are one of the better teams. I could see the Bears going 0-4 right off the bat. Easily. Especially when you got a rookie quarterback. I don't care how good or not good your rookie quarterback is. They don't typically, even Stroud didn't come out of the gates just blowing everybody away. It's going to take, if they are truly great, it's going to take them a couple of weeks typically before you see they're really great. They're not terrible the first 3 weeks, but they're not. Stroud of the first 2 or 3 weeks was not the Stroud when he started to hit his stride and just took off from there. So Joe Burrow, the same thing, struggled his first couple games. So I don't think Caleb Williams is anywhere near in their stratosphere, and he's going to get these good teams. I think Houston and Indianapolis are playoff teams. The Rams are Super Bowl contenders, and I think Tennessee's a sleeper playoff team, just like the Bears supposedly are. But I think this is a bad start for the Bears in general, where I think most people, especially Colin, because I happen to listen to him, think that the Bears got this gift schedule. I think they're in trouble right off the bat. And when they get in trouble right off the bat, they're going to be calling for Eberflus's head again. There's going to be all the turmoil and excuse. It's going to be on for Poles and Eberflus if they don't have a winning record or make the playoffs. One or both of them are gone, and they should be. But if they start out 0-4 and then they just kind of sputter from there, there's going to be all kinds of turmoil in Chicago, especially if they lose to Tennessee.
RC. If they forget that, let's say they lose to Tennessee, they start 0-4, right? Then they get the Panthers. That's kind of like Bryce Young's Super Bowl right there. That is the team that passed up on you and pounded their chest that they passed up on you. He's going to get up for that game. If they lose, if Bryce Young somehow, some way goes in, and remember, he beat CJ Stroud last year. He does sometimes get up for games, and they certainly have the defense to stop a rookie quarterback. If they start 0-5, I think Flus could get fired in season right there.
I think I would almost be willing to bet when they start putting the odds out on that Eberflus is not going to survive. I don't think by the trade deadline.
Yeah.
And then Poles needs to go.
Yeah, and that's gonna really depend on how Caleb Williams looks, because if he looks at, you started off by saying he's not gonna be as bad as Bryce Young, but if he is, Poles is out of there, because now you were parading that you passed up on Bryce Young, but really you missed on CJ Stroud, you missed on Will Levis, you missed on Anthony Richardson. So that's,
and if Jaden Daniels looks better, and if Penix has a great preseason, but then goes to be a backup, and everybody's all excited about Penix, but then if Bo Nix is starting for Denver and he looks good, and then Caleb is running behind them and looking good, whatever that means, he has to be the best looking rookie quarterback for all of them to keep their jobs, and I don't think that's going to happen, and this schedule is not going to do them any favors in that case.
Well, RC, I think this topic and talking about the Titans is a nice dovetail to the next agenda item. Will Levis, what are you hearing about Levis? We all know you're high on him, but is there certain reports you're getting about how he's looking in these voluntary workouts right now?
Everything is everything is a love affair with Levis from the team standpoint. I got no qualms. I want to be in 2024. I want to be the Will Levis guy. Chain me to him and let me have my fate as a scout linked with him, and then I'll pray that their offensive line doesn't collapse. But what I wanted to note is it kind of goes with, it does dovetail in with the Bears thing. When Colin was going over the schedule, and he says, and then you get the easy matchup with Tennessee because you're facing Levis. And then he goes, and I'm just like, I'm ready to throw my phone across the kitchen because I hate hearing that. But then 3 seconds later, I love hearing that because the mainstream absolutely has nothing for Will Levis. The best that they will give is, well, they surrounded him with a lot of guys that we know their names, so maybe Levis will be okay. But if he isn't, they're going to have to draft a quarterback next year. That's the
RC,
best
some
mainstream
don't even
says.
think he's starting. I hear some mainstream people think that like somebody else is going to come in and start over him.
Mason Rudolph.
It's wild to me. I mean,
maybe Kirk Cousins will go there. But there is such a dislike's not the word, because I mean, I guess it is. There's such a dislike for him, but it's because they're so unaware of how good Will Levis was last year. They're going to point to some metrics to show that, his completion percentage to expect it, and I'll pull all of this nonsense without any of the backdrop of the problems they have with their offensive line, the problems that you have with a Mike Vrabel offense to begin with. It's all going to be run-based, and all the problems that Derrick Henry had. That's why people were against Derrick Henry before he got to the Ravens. That's why we were cashing in on him, acquiring him for Dynasty ahead of that, because everybody's looking at numbers from Tennessee and going, well, these guys stink. Look at their numbers. Wasn't true of Derrick Henry, and it's not true of Will Levis. So, but I just wanted to note, Colin was right there, joining the group of just blowing right by Will Levis like he's a nobody. So that's a very another uninformed event by Colin, where I don't think he's looking at anything but highlights and what everybody else is saying and running with it. So he's wrong about the Bears schedule, and he's wrong about Will Levis to the point that I'm not a big pound my fist on the desk for betting and picking games. It's fun to do, and I place bets on games, against the spread for the sheer fun and joy, but I don't put a lot of stock into it. I put all of my money is DraftKings and FanDuel and MGM. They're all getting a free ride on my money with all of my preseason bets of over-under win totals and teams to make the playoffs and players touchdowns over and under and all that kind of stuff. So they'd be sitting on my money for the next 6 or 7 months till they have to give it back to me in January and then some. But I don't bet a lot of games with the spread because anything's crazy in a given week. I don't think there's any real way to consistently predict games at such a high level that you can make big profits off it. I mean, unless you're betting big money and you can get up over that 55% mark with the numbers, the sheer volume, you can make a nice little living out of it. But just basic betting, I don't put a lot of stock in betting games against the spread, but I do it a lot because I enjoy it. I enjoy having some money on the line watching the games, but it's not a lot. But I did one of my first bets, may have been my first bet of a game for the week 1 line was the Titans. I think they're plus 3.5 or plus 4.5.
Whoa.
Against the Bears at Chicago.
That's a deal. I would have expected that to be closer to pick 'em.
Well, again, Colin to me represents the smarter football community because Collins he's a sharp bettor. He's more on target with things than not, but he's being wrong a lot more since he moved to LA and has got his other businesses and he's got to juggle. But I'm not mad at him for losing focus. If I had his life, I would lose focus on the NFL. I know what it takes to have to watch all the tape. There's no way he can watch all of this stuff. So, but he's a voice to me, he's the voice of the smarter football fan where they're going to be headed, and they're so anti-Tennessee. So I think that's driving the line. The early lines in that game are ridiculous. I bet the money line and I bet the with the spread on it. Right after I listened to him talk, and then I went and looked at the schedule for myself. The next thing I did was stop and go on to DraftKings or FanDuel, whichever one of them had the best line, and placed a little wager ahead.
Yeah, and what I'm excited about with Tennessee this year, RC, it's not only Will Levis, but just having Brian Callahan's dad, there as the offensive line coach. That's going to make a big difference. Obviously, they had a lot of people go down from injuries last year, which was leading to Will Levis just getting crushed in the pocket. You know, you look at that first game he started against my Falcons. I remember it very clearly. He torched us because, like, I think the offensive line was relatively intact that week, and
the Falcons are not a great pass rush team. So he had more time than he would for the rest of the year. But then offensive linemen started to get hurt after that as well. It wasn't a good offensive line before that it got to probably the bottom of the barrel by late in the season due to all the injuries. Plus he's trying to throw to DeAndre Hopkins, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, and Chris Moore.
Yeah.
I mean, Vrabel just kept forcing those guys in there. I mean, at least now this year, Hopkins, Ridley, Boyd, I'm not as tantalized by that as a lot are, but they're because they're recognizable names, but they are better than what he had last year. So his offensive line is better. His head coach is better for the passing game. Joe Burrow doesn't have and hasn't had great offensive lines. He just makes it work because he's a talent and can get rid of the ball so well. Levis can get rid of the ball better than Burrow. He's not better quarterback than Burrow. He can his arm is so strong. He's probably got one of the three best, strongest arms in the NFL. So he can get rid of it in a snap of a fraction of a second. So he just needs to not be totally consumed all of the time. He's dropping back to pass, and he needs better than Chris Moore and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine never getting open, forcing him to have to try to force everything to DeAndre Hopkins when they were in trouble because it was the only thing that was going to work.
Yeah, and we'll definitely have our eyes close on them early in the season, throughout the season, but definitely seems like a position that our betting community, FF Metrics, is going to take, being pro Titans, pro Levis, especially from the get-go. RC, let's go to our next topic. You wanted to talk about running backs, some of them that their team loves, some of which their team is kind of trying to push them down. Where are you trying to go with this?
It just caught me in this past week, reading and listening to press conferences from various coaches and GMs from rookie camp. They get exposed themselves to media questions. So, they get the random questions and they're going to talk about various players on the team, how they're going to be used, whatever. I like to listen and see how excited or not excited the coaches are by particular players. So it just struck me that there's two guys really standing out that their team is really not giving any love towards. And then there's two that are getting such love, I don't want to overlook them, and I have a tendency to overlook them because I want to root for some other guys that I like better, but it's not about, you can be the greatest scout in the world of running backs, but give me Kyron Williams usage. I don't care what 40 time he ran or what his particular issues might be in the NFL, and that, there's 25 backups on teams that are better than Kyron Williams, in my opinion. You got to take the Kyron Williams of last year and run with it when they're in a perfect spot getting these great touches. So on the good side, the new offensive coordinator for the Saints, I think Clint Kubiak, I think he's the new offensive coordinator.
Yes, he is.
He's out talking. I mean, he's flat out. It's like, we're going to be a run-based team, and we're running behind Alvin Kamara. So I was like, okay. So there was kind of speculation that the Saints might make Kamara a post June 1st cut and start to move on from him or all that, but not according to nobody told Clint Kubiak about that, because he's just out running his mouth. I don't understand why these guys run their mouth and give their whole game plans away. If I thought they were being diversionary, it'd be one thing, but I have no doubt Clint Kubiak was brought in to have his run game system, and he's going crazy for Alvin Kamara. So that's a positive that I'm raising projections up on. But then I was listening to Brad Holmes, the Lions GM, talking about Jahmyr Gibbs, and it makes me so mad when I hear the Lions praising Gibbs more than I praise my own children. So, because there's a lot of guys that are similar to Gibbs or built better than Gibbs that should be getting similar praise, but the Lions are breaking desks when they draft them. They're reaching up high for him in the draft. Now the GM is saying he expects Gibbs to get way more touches than he did last year. I'm like, okay, I get my back up a little bit about Gibbs, because it's frustrating that I don't think he should have been drafted that high. I don't think running backs should be drafted that high. The Lions should have been taking a corner instead of a running back. You can get other little quick running backs like Jahmyr Gibbs with good hands all over the place. Why did you do this? What? But all that doesn't matter, because the Lions are in love with them, and they don't care who knows it. They're just running around throwing roses at him. So he's almost guaranteed money in fantasy football, even though I want to think that it's not. I want to be suspicious, and I want to, David Montgomery's going to get touches and all that, but they are not going to let Jahmyr Gibbs fail. So Kamara and Gibbs are going to be moving up more in my projections, Dynasty and for 2024. On the downside, then I look at the running back that I'm most known for from last year, Rachaad White, pushing his praises and talking about scouting how great he is in the passing game when no one cared and no one thought it was true, and then he goes out and proves himself. So you would think that Tampa Bay would be appreciative and they would be saying glowing things about Rachaad White, and then you got his running back coach out there mumbling about how great Bucky Irving is, he's not even in the same stratosphere at talent as Rachaad White, and Rachaad White just carried the team at certain points in the second half of the season in a run game that's just as bad as the one that Derrick Henry had to put up with in Tennessee last year, with bad run blocking and just sending him up the middle to die, to get crushed from bad blocking or the opposing teams playing the run and daring Baker to throw. Then when Baker started to prove himself, they switched off of that, and Rachaad White did a little bit better in the second half because they weren't overplaying the run. When they were running around saying all year all preseason and in season, we're running the ball. We don't care if it's not effective. We're just going to keep running the ball. So defenses are playing them to run and stopping the run because they weren't very good at it, blocking wise or anything else wise. So I'm just noting that I'm having to take, as much as I love Rachaad White, I'm having to start to take his numbers down a little bit because I don't know the future numbers. I don't know what Tampa Bay's thinking because all they ever do is talk negative about him like he's some type of problem. And I think the running back coach doesn't like him because the running back coach is under the gun because the run game wasn't very good. He was the first time running back coach last year and their run game was terrible. So instead of him saying, I got to do a better job or with this, that, and the other thing, is like, this is Rachaad White's problem. He needs to hit the hole faster. Like, that is the most ridiculous statement I think I've seen in 365 days, is saying that Rachaad White can't hit the hole with authority. So he hits holes with authority. There's no holes on Tampa Bay. He hits into defenders with authority. And we even had his head coach, Todd Bowles, like week 2 or week 3, say that they don't want Rachaad White trying to improvise. They want him to keep running it up the middle, and even if they don't gain any yards, their goal is to wear down the defense and to get him 20 plus carries, and that it'll make it all up in the fourth quarter. So Rachaad White is not getting the same treatment as Kamara and Gibbs, and I think Najee Harris may be now in danger of getting the bad treatment from the team if what's reported is true, that he asked to not get his 5th-year option because he wants to go play for another team. He wants to hit free agency. So he requested that he not be kept, which may have been a preemptive strike that they weren't going to give him a 5th-year option anyway because he doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, I think he's saving face. I don't think they would have given him the option anyways.
So I'm starting to hear rumblings that Pittsburgh would definitely trade him in the right scenario because they know he's gone. They're not planning on bringing him back. They could try to just run him into the ground for one final year and then let him go. But there's a concern.
Arthur Smith loves to do that.
There's a concern that Najee Harris's head is not with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And when that happens, usually Mike Tomlin leaps into action and you're gone. So, we can see Najee on the trade block. I've seen some reports of saying San Francisco is the leading contender to get him. There is no way. If I could make one bet this year, I would bet everything that I own that Najee Harris is not going to be traded to the San Francisco 49ers. I could believe about 30 other teams before I believe that the San Francisco 49ers would be interested in him. So, the problem is that there ain't many teams interested in him. But Najee Harris doesn't know that. Najee Harris thinks he's one of the great running backs in the league that's being held back by the Steelers situation. So we can see him either on the move or they might not have any qualms making more of a split with Jaylen Warren or making him secondary to Jaylen Warren if he gets mouthy enough or if he's just kind of half-assing it in the preseason.
Hey, the second role in an Arthur Smith offense, right? Like the second running back role is of value. I mean, we saw Algier last year get a lot of carries in Atlanta. I think Warren is a really good bet next year. If Harris is still on the roster, he's probably going in the later rounds. He'll get more push. And at worst case scenario, you're in like a 60-40 timeshare and they'll probably be upside. You know, Arthur Smith is going to want to run the ball like crazy. RC, I want to bring it back for the audience to Rachaad White. I feel like Tampa Bay is doing everything in their power to find an excuse not to play him. What's wrong with his game? Like, let's figure it out. Let's find a reason why he shouldn't go. Last year, they were trying to push Sean Tucker. Now I'm hearing the Bucky Irving thing. And I'm seeing his value in redraft. It's not where it was last year. He was going like 7th, 8th last year, I believe, in like most formats. But now I'm seeing him in like 3rd and 4th. rounds, if that's right. Like, is he worth it at that ADP?
He is, and he's starting to fall to fourth and fifth round as Bucky Irving continues to rise in dynasty rookie draft ranks and in just general dynasty ranks. So it's a good time to buy Rashad. Part of the charm, part of the beauty in Rashad, even though I'm mad at all of this Tampa Bay talk, um, I know he's going to beat out Bucky. Or I'm not worried about Bucky Irving at all. Sean Tucker, I could see getting a little bit more work, and most teams are going to have like a 70-30 split. There's rare 95-5 like there was for Rashad last year, but I think he could do it again if Tucker is still as flimsy as he was last year. And I'm sure they will try to when they tried to push Sean Tucker in the first couple weeks of last season, they would always complain that Rachaad White's not hitting the hole hard enough. Look at his advanced metrics on his yards, on his carries. He's not living up to what is expected and all that nonsense. But then they would put in everybody else, Sean Tucker, Keyshawn Vaughn, Chase Edmonds, and they'd come in and they'd do twice as bad. And I mean that by like Rachaad White's yards per carry were bad, but then he'd be like 3.5 yards a carry. But then Tucker and Edmonds and Vaughn would come in and get 1.5 yards per carry because of the offense. It's not because any of those guys are so terrible. It's just you can't run in a system with bad run blocking that you're telegraphing that you're going to run and that you're going to run between the guards. You're not going to do anything interesting in the run game. So Rachaad White would actually make some yards out of nothing, where the other guys would just get clocked in the backfield so often, and then they just had to pull them. Every time they tried to get Tucker going or Keyshawn Vaughn going, they'd give up on it and go to Chase Edmonds or somebody else, or just keep sticking with Rachaad White. So I don't know why everybody's so anti Rachaad White when he has all of this upside. Plus, they should spend their entire offseason designing a pass game around him to make him a part of the system more, but they're probably not going to. They're probably more focused on trying to get Bucky Irvin touches, and then they'll push him into a game on like the third series of week 1. He'll get blasted in the backfield on his first carry. He'll probably cough up the football within his first 3 hits when he gets mutilated in the backfield, and then they'll stop. That'll be the end of Bucky Irving for several weeks. It's the same thing happened to Sean Tucker last year. Same thing happened to Keyshawn Vaughn. Same thing happened to Chase Edmonds. They couldn't hold a candle to what Rashad was doing. So he's fine. And then the value that you're pointing out, it's the value. Like in the year 2024, now I would rather have Bijan Robinson than Rachaad White if you're making me choose. But if you're going to let me draft Rachaad White in the 5th round, then I got to use a number 3 overall to get Bijan. I'm not paying. I'll get Rachaad White and I'll use my top 3 pick on something else. The charm of Rashad is part of the charm is the value. I think he's super talented, but the Tampa Bay situation is just bad for him when he's got his own running back coach working against him. I mean, those things go. The running back coach doesn't have a real power, and when the bullets start flying, just like last year, then they'll just go all Rachaad White because he's clearly better than anybody else there. So it's gonna be fine. I just hate that they keep fighting him when there's these other running backs who he's just as talented as, or if not more talented, and the teams are singing their praises, but they're not about Rashad. So it's disappointing, but I'm in no means giving up on him. I'm just frustrated with just the way they keep trying to blame him, maybe replace him, whatever. It's a laugh to watch his ADP fall. It's beautiful. I love it. And to watch Bucky Irving's rise just cracks me up. I know somebody's going to take him in front of me, and I'm going to laugh my blank off when it happens. So
Yeah, well, I hope selfishly that his ADP continues to drop and we can get him in the 5th and maybe even 6th round in
and you
redraft
could
leagues
trade
next
for him.
year.
Yeah, you could trade for him in Dynasty a lot easier now. This whole Bucky Irving thing, it is great cloud cover to go get Rashad cheaper than a month ago.
It would be beautiful to see even Rashad get traded to a team with a great offensive line and a
Eh,
coach that
I,
actually can respect them.
I think Rashad's future is going to be I need Atlanta to come through and win this division. I need Tampa Bay to not make the playoffs, and then they'll fire Bolt. Like if they didn't make the playoffs last year, which was coming down to the wire of between Atlanta, Tampa, and New Orleans, had
Hmm.
Tampa Bay stumbled at their way out of the playoffs, Bulls would be gone. That whole group would be gone, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation. So I need Rashad to get through this year to get to the new coaching staff. I was so rooting for Tampa Bay not to make the playoffs. It was a race between please don't let Arthur Smith or Todd Bowles get to the playoffs to get another year of employment, and one of them one of them met my expectation. The other one got a reprieve. So I think Bowles will get his comeuppance this year.
Arthur Smith might have kept his job if he didn't
Oh no, no,
mouth
you
off.
you could fire him
Yeah.
if he made it if he won the division,
Oh, if
even
he
though
won the
it's a
division for
pathetic.
sure.
Yeah,
But even with him losing like that to the Saints, he would have kept it, I think, if he didn't go off on Dennis Allen at the end of the game. I think that's what pushed Arthur Blank over the edge. So, RC, let's dive into the last topic of this episode. You wanted to go over some week one lines you like. Would you like for me to tee up the first one that you provided, or do you want to tee it up?
I'll tee it up since I want to see your reaction. I'm not acting on this yet. I wanted to see what your thoughts were and if you had any data on any of this yet. I know it's early to be doing it, so you might not. So maybe just a gut reaction. But I thought it was quite interesting that we've got in in FFM land a week one with the Rams versus Detroit is for many of us our two best teams in the NFC in our FFM world. So I think you're on that train that those are maybe the two best teams in the NFC. I'm on that train. They're meeting up in week one. The Rams are getting 3.5. What was your gut reaction before looking at any data on that? Were you thinking this is a good setup for Detroit in that it's week one? Or is this a good setup for the Rams in that they've got the preparation and the revenge factor? Or are they just not good enough? Is Detroit now too good to not take them at home in a home opener?
So we loved Rams +3 in the playoff game, right? And I think they covered that, if I'm not wrong, if I'm not mistaken. Now they're getting the hook. Now you have the +3.5, right? What happened in this offseason? Detroit obviously aggressively addressed their secondary. The Rams lose Donald, but what they have compared to their wild card game is Cooper Kupp at full health and Matt Stafford being fresh. It's going to be the first game of the season.
And a real secondary.
And they also addressed the secondary themselves, so they made improvements too. I love this bet for the Rams. Without doing crazy homework on betting trends or whatever, just seeing that I get the hook here, that's huge. I think that this game could easily be 3 points or less. The Rams could easily win this game too. I can't imagine Stafford going into Detroit losing twice. That's a tough pill to swallow.
And my gut reaction was there's so much love for Detroit now that this is a perfect setup for them to fall flat right off the bat against the team that's gunning for them. If they were playing Carolina, if they were playing whoever week 1, there's no real story or no real whatever, I'd be like, yeah, Detroit might just be good enough to handle most teams, and it's going to be rocking in Detroit and everything else. But the Rams are going to have it out for them because of the Goff Stafford trade, the loss in the playoffs, and I just don't think that's a lot of points to give a very talented Rams team with motivations that I just wonder if early on, like week 1, Detroit's now the hunted versus the hunter, whether they're going to get caught flat-footed on week 1.
It happens to the best of us, RC. Once you're compensated, once you're paid, right? That chip you had on your shoulder.
The Chiefs Lions week 1 last year.
There you go. I mean, it was sort of the opposite sort of situation there, except the Lions were the ones hunting. Now, Lions have a target on their back. They were literally an average secondary away from making the Super Bowl. So for me, it's just as simple as this. Goff getting paid automatically and sending Sean McVay and Stafford home in the playoffs, like that chip is off his shoulder now. And now that it's sort of the ball's on their court. Is McVay really going to lose twice in a row? And it's pretty much back-to-back losses. I can't see McVay losing 2 in a row.
If you give them months to prepare for a matchup, I'm going to take McVay versus Campbell when you give them a month to prepare.
Yeah. And now you have
to prepare, or whatever way you want to look at it.
Kupp was a shell of himself in that game. I mean, you're going to have Puka, who's high-powered. You're going to have Cooper Kupp. Obviously, another year where Kyren Williams gets experience. And maybe, do you think Will Dissly comes into play here? He's on the Rams this year, or did I mix up teams?
I think he is on the Rams. Colby Parkinson for sure is, but he's more of a very good passing game. I'm gonna look up real quick.
I might have mixed up the two.
I don't think Dissly's there. No, it's Parkinson. And I mean, Higbee's the starter, but he's going to be out with his knee injury, so it'd be Parkinson and probably Davis Allen as the 1-2 punch. But Parkinson is probably a nudge better than Higbee. They bring back their entire offensive line. This wide receiver trio was humming in the second half of last year with Demarcus Robinson looking as good as any of the other ones.
Oh, yeah.
And Cooper Kupp, if he's to full health. And with the guys, to me, the Rams got two B to A to B prospects in the draft in Fisk and Verse. Plus, they just stole Darius Williams away from Jacksonville, who had a great year last year statistically. Used to be with the Rams. Now he's back with the Rams. And if Tre'Davious, a lot of it hinges on if Tre'Davious White is back. This is a good Rams defense.
It's going to be whatever the situation is. I mean, look, this is a coin flip game week to week. It's hard to get it on the dot, but if you're giving me the field goal on the hook, I got to take that. I have to think this is going to get bet down before week 1.
There's a lot of love for Detroit. There's no love for the Rams just yet, which is the way that I like it on the Rams side. How about when I saw this line, I was moved. What about Arizona at Buffalo -7?
I don't have a strong reaction to that one off the bat. It feels correctly priced. I mean, Buffalo's missing a lot on defense.
I had my interest peaked in Arizona coming off a really good draft, coming off them being a dangerous team last year that could just never finish off the way that they were playing in the first couple quarters. Full Kyler, Buffalo with all of the changes on defense. This might be an interesting one for
I would pick
a team getting caught napping in week 1.
I don't disagree. I would definitely pick the +7. I don't know if I bet it. I definitely don't like Buffalo -7. That feels like a lot. And Arizona 10, I could see Kyler having a week 1 surge here, catching the Bills off guard totally, but I don't feel strongly about it.
And then my other one that caught my attention, Washington at Tampa Bay -3.5.
Tampa -3.5, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I like Washington.
That tells me how you feel about this one.
I mean, you have a rookie quarterback going into Tampa, which I mean,
but he's a runner, so if he was just a pocket guy, it would give me pause. But when you got the runner thrower, that I almost like them in a week 1, like Anthony Richardson, where the defenses are not sure what's about to come at them, and if they're going to be so scared of Daniels running that they give him extra time in the pocket that a Drake May or Bo Nix or any of those guys are not going to get, Daniels will. And Tampa Bay so poorly coached that this might be Washington coming off an excellent draft, a solid free agency period, an okay to good free agency period, now with a real quarterback. Yes, he's in his debut, but that one caught my attention as a possible bet. I'm going to wait to see what your data says about any of these before I do something with it. And again, I'm not doing anything heavy. The one game that stands out for me so far, week 1, is the Tennessee getting points over Chicago. I bet that with the points and bet it straight out money line.
I personally, the one that, and I hate to say this, RC, the one that caught my attention was Pittsburgh getting +3 against Atlanta. I like that one a lot because Atlanta tends to struggle against teams that have a really good D and a ball control sort of offense. Typically, like what Arthur Smith was trying to build is what Atlanta's historically struggled against. So Kirk Cousins' first game, I could see him struggle against that D, and you're giving Pittsburgh +3. I like that. I think Pittsburgh wins that outright.
That would not shock me. I saw that, and I'll probably will end up picking the Pittsburgh side, but I don't know that I'm ready to bet on it yet. If we can see some preseason Kirk Cousins, I don't know that we will, just to see how he's integrating. But I don't. One of the things I don't like to do is bet against teams with new head coaches because there's no book on them. Like one of the things I like about the Rams maybe going up and getting the Lions is the Detroit the Detroit Lions are a known event. There's going to be no change on offense. They didn't bring in any running. I can't believe they didn't bring in any wide receiver. They're a known event. There's going to be no surprise there. With Arizona, like last year, Arizona was a surprise. They should have won their first 2 games of the year. They ended up getting out to big leads and blowing them late. But a new coach with new coordinators and everything else can create a lot of confusion for the opponents. So Washington, that's why one of the reasons why I like Washington against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is getting to be such a known commodity, and Washington, Dan Quinn's not known from. Nobody's going to go back and look at the Atlanta stuff and go, oh, here's what he's going to do. I mean, this is a whole new team with a running quarterback. It's a totally different situation. And one of the reasons I like Tennessee over Chicago is Chicago's a pretty known event with a rookie quarterback, but Tennessee's got a whole new system that Chicago's not going to be ready for.
Yeah. I feel that same sentiment with Tennessee. I feel like we're pretty aligned with liking the Rams as well. One other one that I wanted to quickly run by you to get your thoughts as well. And I think we were speaking about this a little bit with Chris through group chat too. Jets are getting 6.5 on the road, Monday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers' debut game. Do you think that? How do you feel about that? I know I was a little lukewarm on it, but what are your initial thoughts?
I'm probably that just seems like too many points because the best unit on the field is going to be the Jets defense. So
Yeah,
as long as the offense
yeah,
is
that's fair.
halfway plausible, I will bet because I don't know that this will not be a high scoring game. So 6.5, San Francisco would have to, if San Francisco's only going to get to 17 or 20 points, I don't know that that's a defense that's going to hold the Jets under 10.
And you have Aaron Rodgers coming off that injury, going into the Bay where he's from. He's gonna have the biggest chip on his shoulder going into that game. So I can get comfortable with it, but I'm not all the way there yet on that bet. And by the way, RC, FanDuel has Washington plus 4.5. I love those. I like that odd.
It's a
But
bad, it's a bad money
oh,
line, isn't it?
oh, okay. Is that what it
Is
is?
it like minus 115 or 120?
Let me double check.
I'm just going off memory. I
Um,
think that's why I did the 3.5. I teed up the 3.5 in my queue to consider on
it
DraftKings.
it's plus 166 for the Commanders.
Oh, for straight
Money
up
line.
win. What
Yeah,
about?
minus
I'm sorry,
115.
minus 115. Okay,
Yeah.
that's the better bet because it's 3.5 minus 110 on DraftKings.
Yeah. So I see that. I mean, going back to your Arizona bet, I mean, I could see Bill. I don't want to play it, but I would definitely avoid that in Survivor.
Oh yeah.
That seems like a trap, and a lot of people are probably going to get attracted to that. Think, oh, Arizona sucks. Josh Allen versus you know, that team, and it'll be the popular. If you're not going to go with Cincinnati, right, over New England week one, I think a
I
lot of
will.
people are going to gravitate towards Buffalo.
I can tell you what my Survivor pick's going to be right now.
Is it
Cincinnati over New
yeah,
England.
okay, yeah.
There's nothing
You
like
and
that.
everybody
Yeah,
else.
I am not going to not take that one. Just a side note on DraftKings, Rams are down to +3, and Jets are down to +5.5.
Oh, there you go. We already lost our hook with the Rams. Short-lived hook.
I got the hook. I think I just put a couple of bucks on it for fun when I saw it.
Yeah.
Or maybe, no, maybe I just only did the Tennessee. Maybe I held off on the Rams thing until I got a chance to talk to you. In my
Hey,
queue, I'll have to look and see. In my queue, I have the Arizona and Washington, waiting to see what if you had any data yet to
hey,
support or deny it.
I miss this, RC. I miss talking about betting trends. I miss looking at lines.
It's
We
time.
got Yeah, we're in May already. We're halfway to May. Oh, halfway through May. Sooner or later, preseason's gonna roll through, and before we know it, week one.
The most money to be made in my world is week 1 and week 2 because I'm betting on our scouting being better than the mainstream to take advantage of. By the time we get into the season, then and everybody starts catching up to most of the trends, and the lines are all tend to be pretty fair. But right off the bat, there are some beautiful things that jump out, especially on prop betting on individual players, which is obviously not out yet. So yeah, I'm ready for all of it.
Yep. Well, we'll keep you all posted, and we definitely appreciate your time, your attention, tuning into this podcast. Go check out RC's site, ffmetrics.com. RC, before we sign off, do you want to give everybody an update of everything that's going on with the website?
It's been schedule week, schedule day, as we're shooting this. It's been the entire day working on the database, updating the schedules, looking at various weather projections and everything else that you could look at, and times of games and distance of travels and all the things that come with the schedule for fantasy dynasty projections. So now that I've got that done, I start with looking at the defense special teams that we should be targeting because of the schedule, the early schedule. Then I'll be updating the Dynasty and Best Ball top 600 rankings over the next 24 hours. Then next week, I run the first of a couple computer simulated seasons as to what our computer models project on our talent based on the current rosters, obviously with nobody getting hurt. So it's hardly worth the paper it will be printed on, but it is a roadmap as to the strength of schedule, the strength of teams, to see where are the opportunities to be looking at for over/under win-loss total betting. So my series of computer simulations results will start on Monday, I believe, of next week, 5/20. And then all the other 9 million scouting things and reports and everything else that we do. There is no off season for Dynasty fantasy or betting, especially right now. It's the perfect time to be betting.
Always grinding, RC. I love it.